Hey, everybody, welcome. I feel we'll have a lot of fun this afternoon. I just wanted to touch base on a couple of things before we get started. This game, you need good pigeons. No matter what, you need good pigeons. They need to be healthy. Then, if they're trained adequately and the body weight is perfect, the game it gets easy. So if you can consider that, they need to be trained adequately. The body weight has to be perfect. They need to be healthy. They need to be good. Stiffs aren't going to fly to the front and compete. But if you have that, that's the name of the game. It gets really easy. Once you nail the body weight, pigeon racing becomes really, really easy. I'd like to congratulate everybody that's been sending their successes to me. A lot of new fanciers have been following some of the methods that I talk about, mainly the feeding systems, and have been having super success. And many of them want to keep it quiet against their competitors. So again, thank you and congratulations. So we'll start with a few questions. I got a couple ahead of time. And one is on natural health. Now, I'm one of the fanciers in this country that is strictly natural health. I do not medicate the birds, or I do not flock treat the birds ever. I will individually treat the birds. Now, over time, say after a year or so of not medicating the birds, you'll find the bird's immune system will get stronger, the birds will get stronger, they'll look better, they'll act better, they'll be able to take minor variations in weather and stress and all that. And over a longer period of time, they keep getting stronger. The thing with not medicating the pigeons or flock treating the pigeons, you get to separate out the sick ones. The weaklings show themselves. In my population, the weaklings show themselves. And I don't really want the weaklings. I don't want to be breeding from the weaklings. And the people that are steady flow of medicating before the season, after the season, during the season, the weaklings remain. The weaklings breed. So we'll start taking some questions. If a race bird has to skip a race due to an injury, how do I slide that back into the race season to minimize being lost? I mean, it depends on the injury. I tend to try to get them out for a few loft flies once they're healed, and then a couple of very short tosses, maybe within a mile. Then I jump them back right into about the 30-mile station with the flock, and hopefully they can get back in the program quickly. I do put a lot of marker bands on them, so when I'm training, I can separate them out. But I get them back in the program as soon as they seem to be flying and acting well, because you don't really want to lose them. Sometimes they're finished for the season. You have to wait till the following season. But I would go slow. But once they've had a few flights and they've come home from a few miles, you can jump them back to the 30-mile station, and then they go right back into the program. How do you treat for adeno and rotavirus? What's the difference of your treatment of both viruses? There's really no difference. I use I use an oregano product, which I really like, that helps. Being a virus, they tend to cause secondary infections. So I use oregano, I use Virkon S, the disinfectant, half teaspoon to the gallon, maybe for 5 days. I can put some information in the description, and that tends to keep the virus from spreading. It actually tends to limit it too. It seems to help. Plus, I vaccinate for both rotavirus and adeno. We say adeno, it's actually adenovirus. And not sure if the vaccines work. They certainly don't hurt. So you'll also find the better the immune system, the stronger and less response it has to the virus. So the immune system will keep the birds healthier if it has a really strong immune system. Pigeons that are kept healthy with antibiotics tend to get hit the hardest with these viruses because their immune system isn't quite as great as a bird that's never seen antibiotics and had to fight off infections its whole life without antibiotics. Let's see. We just finished our young bird racing. If you can tell us what to feed and how to train during the molting season. Well, during the molting season, once the season is over, when young birds or old birds ends, my birds are locked in. They don't go out again until the following season. So I feed them all they want, like a 14 to 16% grain mix, 14 to 16% protein grain mix, plenty. I leave feeders in front of them usually. But if you can't do that, feed them all they can eat once a day and make sure they have plenty of minerals. All the mineral mixes, the grit mixes, that's more important than even what you're feeding them for the molt. So don't lose track of the minerals. It's crucial for the molt. So again, very important. 14 to 16% protein. Let them sit, let them molt. Once they're just into the wing flights, they're fine. You don't have to worry so much. But when they're molting the body, they need, really everything in front of them at all times. Do you still send Steph Van Reets to the One Loft races? Yeah, the Steph Van Reets have been great. They're blended into most of my pigeons. They go to the One Lofts, and I've had some, excellent results with those pigeons crossed in. The hen I call the Freak, she's half Steph Van Reet, and so on. There's a lot of pigeons that have won for me that have the Steph Van Reet bloodline in them. What can I do to cure one of my pigeons? The hen is vomiting all her food and losing weight. What do you recommend? Preferably the medication or a tablet format. I really like the Tony's Treasure tablets. It's a combination tablet. It has, multiple different antibiotics in it, from canker to respiratory to different types of drugs. And sometimes that will settle the gut. Usually when a bird is vomiting, the grain is not passing through the system. There's a problem with the intestines. So the grain sits in the crop. It's not passing through. It starts to ferment a little bit. The bird gets nauseous. It upchucks the feed. Another great thing for that, any bird that's upchucking feed, is a good dose of amoxicillin, 10%. You could put 2 teaspoons to the gallon, but I individually treat. So I may take like a 1/16 of a teaspoon or an 1/8 of a teaspoon, mix it up. I buy a bulb syringe. You can even use the ones they sell for infants at CVS at the pharmacy, or you can buy them in some of the supply houses. It's got a long, soft rubber tube. Syringe the bird full of the amoxicillin, usually within a couple of days. The bird will be fine. The oregano products also work good for that. It can settle the gut. And that's kind of the things that I do. But if you don't have Tony's Treasure tablets, 2 tablets a few days in a row usually will turn a pigeon around if you're not sure what you're dealing with. Do you remove grits during treatment of canker, any type of antibiotic? Well, I don't do any flock treating. So if I'm individually treating a bird, no, I don't remove any of the grits. I will just give the tablets, leave the bird usually in with the flock. Now, if you are using any of the cyclines, if you amoxicillin or that type, they're affected by the calcium in the grit. So if you are flock treating, you do have to remove the grits, or at least the calcium part of the grit. You could give the stones, but you should remove the grits. Let's see. People just put a video up with young bird sickness, and they say rotavirus is young birds. Well, some of the big vets are saying that the rotavirus is the root of all young bird sickness. Now, is it? I'm not sure. They may know more than I do. I think it's best to vaccinate the babies for PMV and rota at weaning, and maybe again, several weeks later, if you're going to ship them to One Loft. If you're not shipping them, maybe a month or 6 weeks later, you vaccinate them for the second time. I tend to rotate my vaccines. I do PMV, rota. I'll do PMV, adeno, circo, and sometimes I'll mix in PMV, salmonella, bronchial, and all these vaccines are great. I keep rotating and use the different ones. But yeah, rotavirus might be the root of all young bird sickness, and if you vaccinate, I think it's positive. I think it has a good effect. Well, thank you, Robinson family. I'm glad you enjoy the videos. Will cocks do well in the celibate system? Some fanciers have done really well with cocks in the celibate system. My cocks do okay. They don't fly like the hens. I mean, the hens are phenomenal. They destroy the cocks. Like I might have 7 hens and 2 cocks. And I think cocks are better on more traditional widowhood, where you let them out once a day to fly and they kind of get into that type of form. Where the hens, I can just train them twice a week and race them and lock them out in the aviary during the day, and they fly like crazy. So I think cocks are better on a traditional widowhood system. Hens, not so much. I do have some fancies I compete against that fly celibate cocks, but they're late at letting their birds out to fly. They're, giving them some open trap, and I think it helps encourage in the form with the cocks. My cocks don't go out to fly, and I think it hurts me with racing the celibate cocks. What do you think about dove hunters killing our birds? I know it's something we have to deal with. It's a heartbreak if the birds are getting shot on the way home from races, or really not a lot we can do. I mean, a lot of hunters in general will shoot something different. I know whether they'll see a pied or a red checker and it's like a prize thing, and they'll tend to go for something different. But there's not a lot we can do. Falcons are a big problem now too, things we didn't deal with years ago. There's a shout out from the Philippines. Popcorn, I'm glad you enjoy. What do you consider an average number of youngsters tested before you can determine the quality of a breeder? 6, 10? It's tough to say. I usually give a breeder maybe 2 years. If you import a pigeon from Europe, not if you bring a bird, from across town or even within the United States, but if your bird goes through the quarantine process, don't focus on the first year. Like the first year, don't even worry. Breed it, try some babies. Don't invest a lot into entering them in big one-loft races, because usually the first year you don't get the results. The second year you might see the results, third year. So with an import, you may want to give them 2 seasons after the first year. And the good ones, though, what you'll find, they show themselves fast. I mean, you might wean 2 babies and they're excellent. And it's just the good ones jump up and show them quick. You don't have to wait 3 years for the good ones to show themselves. So if you're raising 10 babies over a couple seasons, usually you'll have some success. The good ones will show it. And my good pigeons always, show their class really fast. Is it true that big birds don't fly well compared to small or medium-sized birds? Well, what I would say is it's much easier to condition small or medium-sized birds. So if you're entering, especially in one-lofts, you want to send small and medium-sized birds. The problem with one-loft racing, nearly all of them, not all of them, but nearly all of them, the birds are overfed and they're undertrained. So bigger pigeons, heavier bone pigeons just get heavy. Couple days off of eating, they can't keep up, where a smaller type bird doesn't pack on as much weight. So it's easier on the fancier if you keep medium to small birds. With me, if you feed like I feed, it doesn't matter too much because you can control the body weight. And I think a big bird could do excellent if it's perfect, light and corky and has a perfect body weight. You figure if a big one is beating its wings as fast as a small one, it's going to cover more ground. But usually try not to, pick the horses. Try to keep the size down. It'll make your life a lot easier. If possible, if you guys could hit the like button, I guess that helps with my algorithm, and I appreciate it. My wife rescued my nice long distance Florazone young bird from the grasp of a hawk. It still feels strong, but there's something wrong with the eyes. It's not eating well. Any tips? It may recover. It might just take time. I had a hen this year. She got caught in the belly, like the hawk got her underneath by the vents, and she was bleeding a little bit from her belly. And now she's not right. She's not flying right. She's not putting on weight. I think maybe it punctured an intestine. Maybe some stuff got into her system. And, the bird could probably be finished. You really just have to wait it out. And I tend to give them as much chance as possible and see if they recover. Some do. But if the eye was damaged, you're better off using it for breeding. The eye's not going to recover. A damaged eye won't recover. Thanks, Lawrence. I'm glad you like the information. I saw red droppings on my loft floor today. What does this mean? Well, usually I see red droppings when I feed the grit and mineral mix that I use. It's the Versalaga grit with redstone. So it's possible they just ate a lot of the redstone that's in the grit, one of the pink minerals type of thing that's in the grit, which will cause them to turn red, more like a brown. Or they may have got into something in the yard, but it's dietary, I would think. If the droppings are firm, it's dietary. Don't stress. It's not like it's blood or anything like that. But the redstone will definitely turn the droppings red. I've had birds that they eat a pile of redstone and the whole pile of droppings are red-brown, especially when they're fresh. I had a youngster losing weight. It didn't die, but it's been a month and never recovered. Yeah. I mean, I'm handling birds for the IF convention. The race is early November. And I had a few that they wasted away. I mean, they were just sluggish and slowly losing weight over time. I tried different things. I tried, different treatments, and I couldn't save them. Some of them, I call it just failure to thrive. No matter what you do, some of them aren't going to thrive. Some of them don't have it. And, it's sad, but yeah, some are just weak. They have a weak immune system, weak system. They don't have it, and they're not going to make it. Let's see. What type of product do you use for mite and flies? Do you know ivermectin? Is it possible to use in the water? Yeah, I would say ivermectin is your best choice. The vet over in South Africa was telling me recently that permethrin that we all use, causes the nervous system in a pigeon to go a little nuts, and might not be the best product. And I still spray them under the wing and under the tail, but I try not to get it on their skin. Ivermectin, I buy the sheep drench, and I put a teaspoon to the gallon in the bath water, maybe once a month. It kills everything. You can buy maybe 32 ounces a quart bottle for maybe $60 or $70 online, and it kills all the parasites. It works really, really well. Let's see. What is the difference from feeding barley and depurative mix? Well, barley is the base of a depurative mix. So you could buy a depurative, which is usually predominantly barley, or you can mix your own. I mean, I do both. Sometimes I can't get barley, and I'll buy a depurative, which is, a good mix. And there's been times where I've taken the depurative and added barley because I thought it was too rich. But barley is the number one feed for racing pigeons. If you're going to control pigeons' body weight, you want to have a good quality barley. And I've said before, if I could only have 2 seeds, if I could pick, okay, Frank, you have to race the rest of your career with 2 seeds on the race team. If you give me barley and safflower, I wouldn't need anything else. You could just go with those 2 feeds, 75% barley, 25% safflower. You could use your safflower for fat loading. Best 2 feeds on the market, barley and safflower for racing. But yeah, barley and depurative. I guess depurative is just predominantly barley. Let's see. It seems that birds lose their value the further they are bred away from the originals, even if the family is established and competitive. Why is that? It's the breeder. I'm winning with the same pigeons that I've had for 40 years. Some go back to the 70s. My best pigeons right now go back to the 90s. Birds I selected maybe at Maurice Cassart's in the mid-90s. If you select and you breed from the stars and you get a performance pigeon, not a one-hit wonder, I mean a pigeon that scored over and over, they always tend to be great breeders. And you put them back in the family, you can keep it going. Most fanciers ruin a family within 2 generations for sure, but I've never seen it. I've had my Stefan Reed pigeon since, I think the first one I bought was 1991 or 2. And they're still super, and the Cassats go back to the mid-90s, and my Fabry and inbred pigeons, which are still blended in here and there, they go back to early 80s, 70s. A lot of times it's just the breeder. The breeder loses it and breeds or selects from the wrong pigeons. Let's see. How much do you sell your birds for? Do you have any cheaper breeders for racing? I don't usually sell pigeons for people to race. They're a little bit more expensive. I do have, I raised a round of babies off my widowhood team at the end of the race season. So I've got maybe, I don't know, a bunch, 20 late hatches or so off my race team. And they would be my least expensive pigeons. And my pigeons are less expensive than most. And there's still a huge demand for them because the success has been great. And when I sell you a bird or you get a bird from me, it becomes your pigeon. It's your pigeon, your results. I'm not posting everybody's results on Facebook every time somebody wins a training race at 50 miles. You're not going to see me put the pedigree and the information. I take it. If you want to do it, that's fine. If you encourage me to do it, that's fine. But your pigeons, your results. And I don't push other people's results once they take the pigeons. What do you think about Kaffir? I think it's a good feed. It's like a little corn, I think. And yeah, it's in the mix. I haven't really have much of an opinion. My birds have brown in the throat. Gee, I've never really seen it. I have to maybe get me a good photo and email it over. But brown in the throat, that's interesting. I don't know if it's a mucus, but mucuses usually wouldn't be brown or anything like that. But if you could get a good photo, maybe have somebody hold the pigeon and take a photo, I'll take a look and see what I think. What do you know? Do you use fenugreek? I'm not familiar with it. Again, if you send me some information, I can take a look. I'm not familiar with fenugreek, the product. In your observation that the flocks don't finish the usual amount of food that you give, is it possible a reason behind it? Usually the better the condition, the better they feel. They don't eat that much. And the superstars don't eat they eat very little. Sometimes my great pigeons the others will be eating and they'll just be on the feet or flapping. And you'd be surprised. The great ones don't need a lot. And when they're in super form, they tend to eat less. So there's a good chance you have great form. Now, if they're acting excellent and they're not eating as much, that's a good sign. If they look like crap and they're already, then something's probably bothering them. You may want to rest them, let them recover, give them a week. It's amazing what a week of rest will do for pigeons if they're not looking right. Usually it'll cure many of the evils. I'm preparing my birds for the first race, 350 miles. How far would these birds need to be trained before you can enter the 350-mile race? Shoot, I'll be training alone. I mean, that's a tough one. If the course is flat, you probably want to get them out 150 miles. I mean, I like to see my birds get out 200 miles before I put them in the 350. The convention race, I think, is 350. Most of my birds will fly like a 220-mile race. Some of them will fly 317. But, I mean, if you're training them on your own, if you can get them out 200 miles, it would be helpful. But at least 150 if they don't have to, navigate mountains or anything. If they do have to navigate mountains, you may want to get them over the mountains, let them come through it before the race, because it'll be difficult the first time they see it. I have a combined 400-mile race this coming week. Any tips? Not really. I mean, you want the birds nice and buoyant. I would feed fat seeds the night before shipping and the day of shipping, and then go for it. Keep them on the depurative barley mix right up until that. 2 tosses during the week is fine. If they flew a 35-mile on Tuesday, say you're shipping on a Thursday, they flew an hour on Thursday, day of shipping, and then feed them the fat seeds, they'll be just great. They won't, at this point, if they're ready for 400, they don't need a lot of work. What criteria do you have for young birds if you plan to stock some? Well, I like to select babies right out of the nest, so they just have super quality. If you get a bird, it's bred from a top pair, a top, big winner or something, and it has great feather, excellent muscle texture, good quality, excellent conformation. They all look good at a year old, but if they look super at 30 days old, you're better off selecting then. And I tend to keep some pigeons for breeding from my top racers. And many times those top racers, like at the end of the racing season, I'll take some babies, and those babies will go on to be really good breeders. So keep some babies from the top racing pigeons and breed from them. Breed from the top racing pigeons if you retire them. Breed from a couple of children. More often than not, both will be great. Very rarely will a pigeon that has been successful over and over in races not breed good pigeons. You know what it has. You know it has the genetics. You know it has the qualities. It has the heart. It has the immune system. So ultimately, if you're breeding from a top racer, it makes things much, much easier. Wing vibration. What is your opinion? I know years ago we all used to get excited over that, a bird trembling and vibrating in the hand and the wing vibrating, and I don't think it means anything. My superstars in these hens that I was racing old bird season, and they were winning by wide margins, they just lay still. White, buoyant pieces of cork, they just lay still. There's really, you don't even feel like much muscle strength to them, just very, very light. I knew they were conditioned because they flew the season, very buoyant, little bit of muscle, but no real hardness or tension or tone. And they fly all day and break open races. So they had no vibration or anything like that. So I don't worry. I don't think it matters too much. I don't know if it matters at all. So I wouldn't disregard a pigeon because of it, and I wouldn't give it more credit because of it either. It hasn't meant a lot for me over the years. What reasons would you breed for stock? Well, some of the big mistakes people make, they'll buy a pair of pigeons, and they'll buy an expensive pair of pigeons, and then they'll breed the pair together, and then they'll stock those babies, and they'll breed from those babies, and now they're getting several generations away from pigeons that are raced. Now, I will only breed pigeons for stock that are from proven pigeons, like whether the parents were super racers or super breeders. Don't breed from pigeons for stock that aren't proven. And I think people make a big mistake. And then what's even a bigger mistake, they'll buy unproven pigeons and they'll inbreed them and use those babies for breeding. Well, unless they're proven, don't waste your time. Don't do any inbreeding at all until those birds are proven. Even then, I'm not a big fan of inbreeding. You'll get a lot more. Your best birds will always come from crossed pigeons. The biggest game change in pigeons in the history of the sport are all total crosses. The birds that we talk about for 40, 50 years, they're bred from unrelated pigeons. They weren't inbred pigeons that turned out to be these superstar breeders. There are some good inbred breeders, without question. There's a lot better cross pigeons. So if you're going to select for stock, just select from proven pigeons. Don't select from stock from pigeons that aren't proven. You'll save yourself a lot of time. Can you give us an update on the bird with the black tip tongue? Well, I'm not sure. I haven't looked. I think you were talking about the video I was doing in the yard in front of the lofts, but I haven't looked. I got to find her and see if the tongue has changed. I don't really pay much attention to the tip of the tongue. If the mouth is pink and the bird looks healthy, the wattle's white, eyes are tight, I don't really, pay much attention to it. I think sometimes it's just a pigment, and some have a black tip. I know I did a video on the Badge of Courage. I had a 400-mile bird, and he had a black tip tongue. He was a really good bird. And then right after the video, I lost him. But I think those two deformed flights, when they fly through pain, and those like that first primary or last secondary before the primary gets deformed, it'll never be right. I think the falcon probably picked him out because he had a blemish in both wings. And I was bragging about the bird in the little short, and then he flew the 400, and that was the end of him. I never saw him again. What do you think about eye and nose drops that are sold to remove slime? Oh, too much work. If anything, use the yellow drops. It's acroflavin. It's an antimicrobial, tends to help with canker and open their respiratory tract up a little bit. But I don't know. I think it's a gimmick. They've been selling that stuff for 30 years, and they put it in the bird's mouth, and then they push all the mucus out of the nostrils. And I don't know. I think if a bird has that much mucus in the nostrils, it's not going to perform. So whether you do those things or not, it sounds like a lot of work. If you're going to invest in something, invest in the yellow drops. I did a video on that recently, and it's worthwhile. I think it's helpful. It's beneficial. Can you breed from your celibate hens before the season for young birds, or you would spoil them? No, you can. The reason I don't breed from my race team before the old bird season is because it starts the molt. So I want to go into the 400, 500, 600-mile races, maybe on their first flight. They maybe haven't dropped a flight. Few of them, like I had a hen win that last 500 by a wide margin. I think she was on her second flight. If I mated them and bred from them, they might be on their fourth flight. And then it's getting a little bit far out into the wing for long distance races. Now, I do think that if you did pair and breed from the celibate hens, it would be beneficial in some ways. What you lose in the molt, they'd be less likely to mate to each other if they were mated and raised babies before the season. So it's a catch-22. You're fighting with the molt, or they're going to be mating together and maybe laying eggs late in the season. So I've even thought about it. I raised such beautiful babies from my race team at the end of the season. I thought maybe I should just pair them and get around from them before the season. But I am a little worried that it does start the molt, and they might be on their third or fourth flight for the long distance races. My thoughts exactly on the wing vibration. Yeah, I wouldn't. It's fun to look at, but I wouldn't select for it. How many times can you breed from your racing pigeons without spoiling them? I'm not sure what you mean. Like I mate my birds in January and they're still paired. What's it, September 23rd? They're still paired. They've been they raise babies through the body molt. Doesn't affect them. The birds are strong. You get all the minerals and stuff in front of them. It doesn't affect them. Now, my birds have a good genetics and good strong immune systems, and you'll get these sick babies here and there. That happens. Don't panic. Everybody's going to raise some sick babies. Some of them are just weaklings, and at least with me not medicating, I can separate out the sick ones and not use them for the future. Well, people that medicate tend to keep the sick ones and end up breeding from not the sick ones, the weak ones, I should say. They don't get sick because of all the meds, and then they end up, you're breeding from weaker genetics, and I don't want to do that. Yes, Colin Walker, I met him in Zimbabwe. I think I was there in the family in 2019. Spent a lot of time with him, actually. Super interesting guy. Loved asking him questions. Brilliant pigeon vet. If you don't have his book, the thing weighs about 10 pounds, big, thick book. It's probably the greatest pigeon, vet book ever. Wonderful book, and I would recommend it. But super guy, super knowledgeable, and I enjoyed talking to him and getting to know him a little bit. My club races from the west to east. Can I bring my birds 30 miles north to work with me in the morning as part of my training routine? Can I get with bringing them west one time a week? Yeah, once your birds are trained, don't worry about direction. I train in all directions. If I'm going south, we race west to east. If I'm going south, the birds go south. If I'm going north, the birds will go north. The direction does not matter. It actually does them good. They come out, they have to think. They don't always just come out, okay, I'm west to east, west to east. Then they run into trouble. They don't know where they are. So if you can train them going to work in the north, that's great. One of the best seasons I ever had in Boston, I was in grad school, and I was training my birds dead south. Now, we fly west to east, and I was taking my birds to the south. And it was about maybe 20 miles south, and I would take them in the mornings to my grad school, and I had a terrific season. And again, direction doesn't matter. Don't get caught up on the direction, and you'll be better for it. Do you breed from older hens? Yeah, absolutely. I breed from hens. I'm trying to think what are some of my older hens, 9, 10 right now, probably. Some of my best hens are 2015s. And the thing about older hens, and the thing to keep in mind with some of these older pigeons, when you're breeding from these older pigeons, is they've been exposed to so many things. Like they've seen the circos, the adenos, and the rotavirus, and PMV, and they've fought off salmonella, and they've fought off canker and respiratory, and all that is in their pigeon milk. All that goes in the egg. All that is in their, genetics to pass to the babies. So as long as they're raising healthy babies, yeah, older pigeons can be great. When I used to follow the $1 Million race in South Africa, many of those winners over there were bred from really old hens. And I think part of the reason was those old hens passed on some really good immunity. A yearling hen is going to, breed a strong, nice baby, but she's not going to pass on the immunity in her egg and in her crop milk that a 10-year-old hen will pass on, because that 10-year-old hen has seen it all. And so don't be afraid. If they're raising top babies, nice babies, just keep breeding them until, they won't breed anymore. How far would you let the flights go before you can start to tip the flights after 4, 5, and 6? How far would you let the flights go? I'm not sure. Try to maybe reword that for me, what you're asking. Oh, I think I know what you're saying. Oh, if you're going to start, you want the birds to start holding the flights. If you think you're going to run into trouble with the bird dropping the 9th or 10th flight later in the season, take just the microscopic tip off of it, and then it'll grow in the 8th flight all the way before it drops the 9th. In nature, if a flight is broken, the nature doesn't want it to drop the 7th flight if the 8th flight is broken. So it'll grow in the 7th flight all the way before it drops the 8th flight, because the bird in nature can't have a big hole in the wing. So if you take just the tiniest tip, like my convention birds right now, they're all got the tiniest tip off the 10th, some of them the 9th and 10th, and they might be, some of them are on the 7th, 8th flight, some have a full wing. But I want them to have a full wing before the full flight before the next flight drops. So you can do it way in advance. Don't take the chance. Once the flight starts growing in, it's not going to stop. So do it. If you're worrying about the bird dropping the 8th or 9th during the big race, take the tips off when it's only on its 5th or 6th. And I'm talking just the tiniest little bit, tiniest little tip off the flight. Let's see. Could you talk about the blue tongue and purple breast, and how can you get pink breast? Thank you. It's funny. I don't really worry about the tip of the tongue being dark. I mean, blue and I've never seen purple breast in my birds. I don't know if it's a ventilation, probably, stressed, and maybe they're not getting the air. But again, I don't see it. I'm not exactly sure what causes it. I would definitely make sure that the birds have great ventilation and, nutrition, grits and minerals, and maybe bring the protein down. I don't race on very high protein, 11, 12% maybe. And people think, they need all this protein to race. They're loaded them up, and not. Maybe bring the protein content down and see if it helps a little bit. Immunity is genetics and is influenced by epigenetics, which include nutrition, both macro and micro, not to mention microbiome disruption with medications. No, you're absolutely right, Roger. I mean, genetics and immunity and the microbiome. The microbiome is like the bacteria in a bird's intestine. Now, you figure if my pigeons have gone 10 years now without antibiotics, that microbiome in the intestine is the way it should be. It hasn't been disturbed. It hasn't been ruined. Most people ruin it, and then other bacteria take hold, and then it's probably not what nature meant it to be. So if you can get away from flock treating the birds and have a correct microbiome, which is the correct bacteria for the pigeon in the intestine, you're going to be way better off. And I think that's what's helped me in the old birds. I race against some good fanciers, and I had hens winning long distance races by like 20 and 30 minutes. I mean, I scared myself. I mean, I've won races by wide margins, and I've won races, usually I can win by 5 or 7 minutes, and that's a good gap. But to have like a 20 or 30 minute gap is a massive gap. And some of it might be to do with not only the strong immune system and, the microbiome in the intestine has never been touched. It's pristine. It's the way it should be. And I thought about actually selling some of my droppings. People could mix in their water, but then it might be a disaster. So I got off of that kick. But something to consider. Genetic-wise, when we have top breeders propagating in or line breeding without understanding the molecular genetic consequences of such, we propagate birds that are immunocompromised. Yeah, I think if you're going to be inbreeding, you can immunocompromise the birds. I mean, crosses are going to have stronger immune systems. Inbred pigeons are weaker usually in general. And I don't like inbred pigeons. I mean, I do inbreed some real superstars, and a lot of times people want them that way, and I'll make special matings. But for me, if I'm going out, I normally don't look for a heavily inbred bird. Your word is gospel to most fancies, a value statement about not flock treating with antibiotics, respect. Well, you know what? I would like to see the sport. I'd like to see more people make the commitment. It can be done. Like my competitors look at me, and I had a guy call me out in the club. Well, how many people can actually do what you're doing? A lot of people, but you got to suffer through the hard knocks. Like, you're not going to get there. Maybe you'll have a bad season or a bad year, but in the long run, it's better for the sport. It's better for your pigeons. And I made the commitment that over time, I'm hoping my pigeons are so far ahead of everybody else's that they won't be able to catch up. And when people bring big birds in from me, let's be the same thing, that they're just better. Their immune systems are better. The birds are stronger. And again, I get sick ones. Everybody gets sick ones. And mine get sick, and they will get sick. I'll send them out to one-off races. Some of them get sick. But the ones that don't might be stronger than the others. And that's what I'm striving for. And you can do it antibiotic-free. I don't flock treat. and I've raced and dominated. I've got was racing 4- and 5-year-old pigeons on my old bird team, flying spectacular, that have never seen a drop of antibiotics in their lifetime. And not many people can say that. And these birds were just amazing. Thank you, Fred. Love the information. Help me in many ways. Keep them coming. I'll keep the videos coming. I'm having fun with it. And if you guys could hit the like button, I'd appreciate it. That helps with the algorithm and all that sort of good stuff. I'm not that far away from you. When is the best time to cut and pull the 9th and 10th flight? Well, you have to do it early in the season, hopefully before you start training. So when the bird drops the first flight, maybe take the tip off the 9th flight. When it drops the 2nd flight, pull the 9th flight. And then when you pull the 9th flight, take the tip off the 10th flight. And when the 9th flight is about fully grown in, pull the 10th flight. And again, when you pull the flight, you can't put any pressure on the quill. If you collapse the quill as you pull the flight will grow and deformed. It'll never be right. So you have to pull the flights without putting any pressure on the quill. So you got to hold over here. Don't squeeze here if the flight is in the quill. The flight will be ruined forever. So you have to be careful. But once you know how to do it, you do it. And my birds grew in beautiful feather. Like I pulled the 9th and 10th, 9th on most of them, and not the younger ones, but the 9th and 10th on some of them. And they grew in just beautiful, perfect flights. Let's see. How do you begin training young birds after a 2 lockdown? Maybe a 2-week lockdown? Well, I would just, if the birds are locked down, you're feeding them predominantly barley so they don't get heavy. So if you're feeding them, say, 80% barley or even 100% barley, if they have to be locked down for a long period of time, a loft fly, and you could go right back out, maybe 1 loft fly and then 30-mile toss if it's only 2 weeks. Now, I've talked about it in long distance racing. My long distance teams fly every 2 weeks. So keep this in mind that they fly 500 miles on Saturday and they'll fly, say, 12 hours. Won't leave the loft. They're locked in the loft, no exercise until the following Tuesday. What is that, 10 days or so? They'll go 35 miles. On the Thursday, they might go 35 to 50 miles, and then they'll ship again to the 500-mile race. So these hens, I had a hen win 2 combines, and in 2 weeks, she had 2 flights. And then I had another hen, she was behind the first hen. She was like an equal winner both times. And in 2 weeks, she had 2 35-mile flights. So they don't need much work. If they're conditioned and you feed them correctly, they don't need a lot of work. And once you can nail that body weight and realize this game becomes easy, it becomes much simpler if you master the body weight. And once you see it and once you do it, you'll have an epiphany and say like, wow, all this training and all this gas and all this work. Now, I like to compete. I want to win. But I also don't like to work. I don't want to work at it. I'm tired. I've been doing it my whole life. I'm busy. I've got a family. I've got business. So if I can compete and be highly competitive with about a fraction of the work of my competitors, that's awesome. And that's pretty much what I preach. Is there any need to pull flights when you can just tip them the way the bird goes to each race with a full wing? Well, they're still going to drop. I mean, you can tip the 9th and the 8th will grow in completely, but it'll drop the 9th once the 8th is grown in completely. So you can still have a big hole in the wing, an 8th flight and a 10th flight, even if you tip them. If you didn't tip the very tip off the 9th, the 8th might have only grown in 3/4, then it drops the 9th. Then you got a 7th flight and a 10th flight with a big hole. So it's better if you're serious about racing the end of the season. It's better to pull flights. I'm going to tell you guys, if you made it this far, I'm going to tell you a little something I'm going to do. And for the next 2 weeks, everybody who puts a comment in this video and tells me their favorite video that I've produced, tell me your favorite video and tell me who you shared it with. I'd like you to share it with another pigeon friend. Maybe we can get me some more subscribers. In 2 weeks from now, so today's the 23rd of September, I'll do a drawing. It'll be a random comment picker drawing, and somebody will win a really nice pair of pigeons. I'll select a real super pair of pigeons. I also will have 3 runner-ups And I misbanded 3 beautiful babies this season. And the 3 runner-ups will also get a misbanded baby. The genetics are there. I mean, the paper doesn't fly and the band doesn't fly. So again, at the end of this video, put in a comment, tell me your favorite video, share it with a friend, tell me who you they don't have to tell me. You can say I shared it with my, clubmate. It's an honor system, but you have to be a subscriber. And in 2 weeks' time, we'll do a drawing and we'll give away some pigeons. And I hope everybody likes that. Let's see. We raced north to south over 90 miles of ocean with wind coming out of the northeast and blowing across the race course. Would you still keep them light? Yes. Heavy pigeons have no chance. People think that they have to be like, big round like geese going to 600 miles. No, they have to be, they have to be light. They got to be strong. You don't want them skinny, but they need to be buoyant. Buoyant, light pigeons fly into headwinds like crazy. I had a friend call, and he was out of the middle of the country, and he took his team, and he has 2 teams. He's feeding one team like I feed. He's feeding the other team like his partner wants to feed. And then they had a race predicted, 250 miles, strong headwinds. And his partner said, these pigeons have no chance. They're not going to make it home. They're too skinny. They're this, they're that. Well, he was like first, fourth, and something combine with these pigeons that his partner said were too skinny. So they need to be light and buoyant, even for long headwind races. They're going to fly into a headwind better without carrying extra weight. So don't worry too much. That's more important than you think. Let's see. Your feeding method is gold. I finally get it. If you master feeding, you master racing. Now, again, you need good pigeons. You need good pigeons. They have to be healthy. But believe me, once you learn how to send them with proper body weight, the game gets so much easier. And again, I select pigeons that are light and corky and buoyant. I mean, I'm not selecting and breeding from lead. I'm breeding from nice, light, buoyant, corky, great feathered pigeons. And that makes it easier too. How many tosses would you recommend before young birds before the first race? I'm not sure. I started to keep track. I mean, probably 20 or 25 to get them out there to the first race. I like to take them on a lot of short tosses. I like to take them north and south and kind of work around the compass. This year, I was running out of time, so I kind of got them out to the west first, and then I started working the compass later at maybe like 30 miles dead north, 30 miles dead south, just so. But yeah, maybe 20. It's hard to say. I would recommend if your birds fly more than an hour to give them a day off the next day when you're training them for young birds. You don't want to burn them up. People train them through the heat of the summer, keep pushing them and pushing them. It's not needed. And so if they fly an hour, give them the next day off and then go back again the following day. Thinking of racing roundabout next year. Would you be okay to train cocks one day and the hens the next? The other sex is not training, give them 30 minutes loft fly. Yeah, you certainly could. I wouldn't put that much effort into it. I would just keep the sexes separated. And if they join up after the race, that's fine and be a lot easier than trying to do the roundabout. All that motivation stuff is useless. You'll find that it doesn't work. People like to separate the young birds, cocks and hens. You're making a lot of work for yourself. Believe me, it's not beneficial. Once you just leave them all together, let them do their thing, you'll have more birds at the top. My hens race to the V perch in the hen loft, and they're phenomenal. There's no motivation. I don't know what they're flying for, but they're flying and they're winning. So they're just flying for home. That's what they do. Rumor is you're moving to Florida. Yeah, my son's looking at schools in Florida and now California. So I might be joining you guys in Florida or possibly California, but it'll be one of the two. So yeah, I'll be cutting back a lot of pigeons and moving this time next year. So that's going to be interesting. It's never fun to move. Not doing so great in the races, even though the information you tell us about antibiotics. I will suffer a couple of years. Not sure if we better, as you say, a couple of years without antibiotics. Well, the first year could be rough. You'll find that birds that have been treated all the time, they're going to raise some sick babies. You might have some birds with respiratory, with canker, but at least you'll get to see the weaklings. But a lot of those birds, sometimes the second year, they'll be just fine. Their immune system will catch up. And I have pigeons. Sometimes I'll bring in a new bird and I'll vaccinate it, worm it, spray it, throw it in my breeders, and it'll get sick. And my birds look like $1 million, and the new bird got sick. It just went in there. So it just was weaker than the others. And over time, it'll benefit the birds. It'll benefit you. The game will become easier if your birds stay healthier without all the antibiotics. Is it okay to hopper feed just barley for 2 weeks when molting? When I'm on holiday, if they're molting, I wouldn't be feeding them barley. Are you talking about if it's during the race season and they're dropping a few flights or doing some light molting? Yeah, you can do that during the racing season. But if they're molting, barley's not the feed to feed. I mean, if they're going through an end of the season heavy body molt, you want to feed them a good rich feed. I feed Vercel like a champion. I supplement them with chicken pellets. I have a feeder of chicken pellets usually they can eat from also, and then all the minerals and grits they want. My brother is the master of grits and minerals. He keeps them well stocked in front of the birds, and we give them rabbit pellets a couple times a week for the greens and stuff. It's an easy way to give greens. Who wants to mess with kale or spinach or all that? I buy a high quality rabbit pellet. Number one ingredient must be alfalfa. Give it to the birds, a handful once a week, and they do really well with that. Let's see. Am I coming to Blackpool in January? Yes, I'm planning to. The only thing I might have a conflict with jury duty. I canceled jury duty last year so I could go to Blackpool, and I'm hoping it's not going to be the same time this year, but we'll see. But I am planning. My friend Tim, he has frequent flyer miles. He sends me free airfare. So how can you refuse going to Blackpool on free airfare? We have the best time ever. If you haven't been to Blackpool, it's the big show in Blackpool, England. Like maybe 50,000 fanciers congregate on the city for a weekend, and there's about 50 auctions around town. Every hotel has auctions going on, and it's wonderful. You run from auction to auction, and then the exhibit at Blackpool, they have lofts, they have systems, they have products, they have a giant show. It's a good time, and it's really the who's who of the pigeon world, and the English are such a fun group. It's a lot of fun. I got 14 following your feeding and health program. Well, that's great. I know I'm getting some great reports, and a lot of the young kids don't want their old timers to know what they're doing. And, they're trying to keep it secret, which is great. I like feeding birds and natural health videos the best, so I appreciate it. The video on feeding a light 90% barley, also video on young bird trying them both. Well, that's great. After this video, put comments in, and if you have a question too, feel free. I might be able to answer it for many. And instead of, having multiple times through email or something, I can answer the question for a bunch of people at the same time. What do I think about body structure? Apple body versus deep keel. I don't like deep keel pigeons. They're usually too bulky and too heavy. I don't like pigeons with a lot of bone. Most of the sport selects for show quality, strong back, strong bone, heavy type pigeons. Oh, they're beautiful in the hand. Well, these things got to fly. You're better off selecting pigeons that are super light and buoyant. I was showing my helper the other day. We had a pigeon we were doing a photograph. I own bestpigeons.com auction. And we've got some great pigeons on that. But we were looking at a white pigeon, and it was just a medium size, no extra, just a piece of cork, feather on a small body, light, corky, eating all at once. And I said, if people selected this type of bird, they'd make the game so much easier for themselves. But we like to pick the show ones. We like to pick the showy ones, the strong, the beautiful, the round, the full. Great for the show, but maybe not necessarily great for racing. I mean, apple-bodied, yeah. I don't like a bird with a lot of meat, and I like a bird that stays very buoyant. And if you can select pigeons that feel like they're in racing condition in the off-season, that makes the game much, much easier. No matter what you do, they're in really good shape. Hey, turned down a friend of to my methods. He's a roller guy. Well, yeah, pigeons are pigeons. It's all the same if you're trying to get them to perform. Which strains and origin have been your most successful breeders and races? It's tough to say. I've had a lot of good pigeons over the years. I'd say some of my best pigeons right now, I've got a family of birds down through the dark hen, and they're a Cassat Van Loon, Van Riet-based family. It's like the freak family. My Durasa blonde pigeons have been phenomenal. I mean, I just can't even believe it. They've been super birds. The Steph Van Riet birds have blended in. The families, they've been great. A lot of good pigeons. And, I'm always trying some pigeons. I've tried the Casboa pigeons have been exceptional too. A lot of success with the Casboa pigeons, Gaston Dewar. And I've had some good luck with the Gearing's pigeons. Not as much maybe as, say, the Casboa pigeons, but they've been good too. Come to Orange County, strong club here. You never know. I'm not sure where his colleges are, but, he's looking in Southern California. What is your criteria for selecting young birds you send to one-loft races? Are young birds from proven to young birds? The young birds from proven breeders? Well, what I do is I go in and I just look for the quality. I start with the quality. I want medium size, buoyant, corky, great feathered, healthy babies. And if you do that, that's half the battle. Then I tend to look them up and see, what pairs they're out of. But if you're breeding from the parents, hopefully they're good birds. You have a lot of faith in them, and try to select, not too big. Because like I said earlier, in one-loft races, the birds are overfed and undertrained. Most of the one-loft races. So heavy birds, bigger birds, birds that tend to pack on body weight are not going to be successful. So you want to pick pigeons that are pretty light and buoyant and corky, even as babies. If you grab that youngster and it feels like a big piece of lead, I wouldn't probably send it to the one loft. If it feels like a full can of, Coca-Cola, don't send it to the one loft. So if it feels like an empty can of Coca-Cola, that's probably your best shot. And send from your best birds. And if you can send from birds that have already raced performance pigeons, your odds are even better. Thoughts on sunflower? I like sunflower. I think it's a great feed. It's a great fat seed. It's in, I use the Vercel Lager Energy as one of my fat loading. It has a lot of sunflower. My sunflower that I use is not in the husk, but I think you could use it in the husk. But I like just the sunflower out of the shell. I think it's a great thing. What are your thoughts on 700-kilometer race where most of the track is 30 degrees Celsius? Yeah, you got to nail the body weight. If you nail the body weight on 700 kilometers in the heat, the birds can stay in the air a lot longer. If they're carrying any extra weight, they wilt, they drag. It's too much weight. So you want to nail the body weight, have them light and buoyant, and enough fat. They don't need a lot of fat to fly 700 kilometers. People think they have to be round like a big and round and full, and they don't need a lot of fat. A little bit of fat. They fly all day. So don't get too crazy with, loading them up. It's more of a body weight thing than anything else if you want them to fly to the front for a long period of time. My favorite video is a tutorial on vaccination. Help me. Well, that's great. Put them in after the video. Put them in the comments, and you guys will all be in the comments, and somebody will win some pigeons, and hopefully they'll be good for you. What types of homers should I get started in racing? How many pigeons should I get to start? Long distance, short distance pigeons. Should I only get pedigree? Well, if you're just starting out, I would go to someone local, and if you can, buy off their race team. Buy, pigeons at the end of the season, buy late hatches, and concentrate on middle distance pigeons. There's very few long distance races, so concentrate on pigeons that can fly 200 to 400 miles. They'll do the job, and it's hard to say how many you want to, have. 10 pair probably to breed a young bird team. You don't want to overdo it in the beginning, and give them a try. I think most of the people like my master feeding, master racing, and that's one of my favorite videos too. What pigeon strains are you keeping? Well, I keep a lot of different families of birds. I'm always trying pigeons. I mean, I have the Durasa blonde birds. I have my freak family, which is down from the Van Riets and the Cassats. I keep the Steph Van Riet pigeons, Casboa pigeons, some Gearing's pigeons, and a lot of pigeons that I'm trying. I've got some pigeons, Rick Herman's bloodlines, and some really top syndicate loft pigeons that I'm trying. But I have to part with a lot of pigeons this year that I never really got to try. So during the heavy molt, they're not supposed to be on the barley diet. Yes, if they're molting heavy, you want to feed them And if, you're not even, if you're training the birds, there's no need to keep them on the, strict diet of barley. If you're just training them, they don't have to have perfect body weight for training tosses. I click into the serious feeding come the race season. So some people contact me, they've got their birds on like 80% barley 3 months out from the race season. There's no need. Switch over 10 days before the races, a week before the races, and use the first race as training. Don't get too crazy about the first couple weeks. Use it as training and then win at the end. Everybody remembers who won at the end. Nobody remembers who won at the beginning. What are your thoughts on how wind farms affect navigation? We have several on a race course this year. Yeah, I think a lot of this technology is messing up with the birds. I mean, it's hard to say, and all these electrical currents and stuff can have positive and negative effects on the birds. And I think those wind farms kill a lot of pigeons because those propellers they look like they're moving slow, but the tips are going at something like 25 miles an hour. So if a flock is going by, the tip looks like it's pretty far up into the sky, and as they come close, birds could be getting wiped out. It's sad. It's the obstacles we have to deal with. I don't know if it hurts their navigation at all, if they have already started home, but I think it definitely can be an obstacle and kill some pigeons. What is the future of the Staff Van Reed pigeon? Well, my Staff Van Reed pigeons are great. I've had them now since the early 90s, and they're still spectacular. And I keep them straight, and I cross them in with my other birds. And I also will race some straight ones just to get a performance pigeon now and again. And everybody wants them pure, so I've been keeping them pure. And they tend to take the pure breeding like I've been doing. Is barley hard to digest or not? No different than any other grain. I would say like a corn would be harder to digest than a barley. Do your birds have to be ranges and well before you start training? No, my birds never range. Some properties, some places you live, the birds will not range. Where I live now, I don't live there, but where I keep my pigeons, they don't range. Occasionally they'll disappear, but there's no ranging. They circle. When I lived in the city as a kid, they ranged like crazy. When I moved the birds to Oregon, they ranged like crazy. They took off. They were gone forever. Some locations, I don't know if it's what's in the ground or what kind of magnetic field it is, the birds will not range. So no, once they're flying strong, if they're flying 30 minutes, they're so strong, start training them, but go slow. I go really slow. I go a quarter mile, I go a half mile, I inch them out. And if I'm going to have losses, usually it's short. And then once I get them out to 30 miles or so, I don't have any issues. So they don't have to range. If your birds are ranging, it's time to train them. Don't let them range week after week after week. As soon as they start to range, start training them. You don't have to train them all the time. You train them around your schedule, pick a good day, take them on short tosses, get them started. It's fine. It's good for them to start. Let's see. Is water pH something you would consider important? I haven't tested the drinking water of the birds with the pH. Usually it's probably around 7. I do acidify the water with like apple cider vinegar a couple of days a week for the race team. After the race, I'll put like 1.5 ounces of Bragg's apple cider vinegar with the mother the 2 days after the race. But I haven't really paid attention. It might be something. You could always move to spring water for your race team if the water is very high pH. And I don't think low pH would probably be a little bit better, but I'm not exactly sure. Is a consistent bird worth bringing back even if it didn't place the money? Yeah, you'll find that a lot of these pigeons in one-loft races that flew pretty good, they're still going to be better than a bird that you haven't tried. Many one-loft races, pigeons tend to do excellent. If they finish the series on, like, say, Victoria Falls or those tough one-loft race series, those are good pigeons. And many of the birds that, like, say, finish the Victoria Falls series go on to be great breeders because they have something. I mean, it's difficult. There's a lot of obstacles. There's a lot of stress. They can have health issues. They're dealing with hawks, and they've got a lot of guts. And, yeah, a lot of times you're better off breeding that than a bird that, you don't know if it's any good. At least if that one can come home and is showing something. Are you a fan of peanuts? I hate peanuts. I did a video on peanuts. The problem with peanuts is I'm such a strict body weight guy. The body weight of the pigeons is everything for me. And people overdo the peanuts. They have them eating them out of their mouth. They got the bird on their shoulder. They're putting them on the perch. 1 or 2 peanuts is like, a couple, 3 or 4 hot fudge sundaes for probably us. So peanuts have their place. Like, if anything, I would use peanuts, put them on the pad. So when the birds come home from a training toss, there's 3 or 4 peanuts on the pad. First bird on the pad gets a peanut. But I'm not a fan of peanuts. I'd rather use other fat seeds than peanuts. And I think the biggest reason, again, is people overdo it. It's peanuts are pigeon heroin. The pigeons will do anything for peanuts, and the fanciers like that. But then, they got a lot of big fat pigeons during the race season. If you're going to mess with peanuts, do it in the off season. What do you think about club racing versus one loft racing? Well, when one loft racing first started, I was worried that it was going to ruin club racing because, I love club racing, but it's great. One loft racing allows people with no time to actually race their own birds to breed and follow and have success and, enjoy it on the internet. So, yeah, I think it's great. I mean, ultimately, it's fun to race your own birds. It's nothing like seeing your own birds come home from races, and I love racing my own birds, but I also enjoy the one lofts. And again, I think it's good for the sport. I think it's helped grow the sport, the one loft racing. Wind farms are horrible for the birds here. Yeah, I mean, I'm not a big fan of the wind farms. They're putting them in the ocean right now, and it's like, yeah, I mean, there's whales that can't navigate. So maybe if the whales can't navigate, maybe our pigeons are having the same type of issue. When you talk about buying birds from different places, some people think you shouldn't because you want birds from similar climate and topography. Well, I think, ultimately you should probably get some birds around where you live. But I also like to, if you're going to have a breeding team, I like to bring in immune systems and genetics from different areas. Like, say you brought in a bird from Victoria Falls auction, and you get a bird from Belgium, and then you this side of the country and this loft, and you mix those genetics up, you mix that bacteria up, you get that soup going, and it helps the immune system of the pigeons. Ultimately, you might be better off buying birds locally from fanciers that have success. And I wouldn't concentrate on the fanciers that work the hardest at it, because, buy from the fancier that's got a full-time job that, manages to do the best he can and still has a lot of success, because he has some pretty good birds. I mean, if you have all day, every day to mess with the race team, you should have success. You should have a lot of success, but very few people can do that. Let's see. Yeah, my birds never range either. Yeah, some places your birds will never range. No matter what you do, they're not going to range. And I don't know why, but I've had fanciers contact me and tell me the same thing, that my birds won't range. And I saw it. I've had my birds at 3 locations now, and they ranged from 2. When I moved my birds to Oregon, it was unbelievable. I had like 45-day-old babies ranging, and the birds where they're at now, they never range. They circle. You barely ever go out of sight. They might disappear over the pine trees and come back through, but they don't range, and it is frustrating. If I could ask everybody to hit the like button and share my video out, and I'll put some things we touched upon in the bottom of the video when it's over. Africa Pro are having a fantastic season so far. They've raised Africa Pro, they're doing an incredible job with those birds. Those birds, they have very few losses, race after race. They're coming really well. I think that's going to be a big race. Africa Pro is going to be a super race. And I'm going to try to get a lot of Americans to enter this year and go over. You can enter 1, 2 pigeons. You can enter a team. But it's really, I think it's going to be one of the great ones. We got Africa Pro. We have Victoria Falls. In America, you have the Hoosier, California Classic, Big Andy does a good race, Florida Derby. There's some great races out there, and there's great international races. But I'm going to be pushing Africa Pro. I'm excited about that race and the future of the race. If there were only one product, what would it be? If I could only use one product, I'd say the best product on the market is Van Beek Global VBG Avian Solution. It's an oregano product. My convention birds have been on that every day since April 1st when they started coming in. Okay, there's been a few days where I gave them red cell, they were on Virkon S, but they've been on it every day, that oregano product. And they say it works as good as the antibiotics. I'm not sure if it does or it doesn't, but dealing with pigeons from all different lofts, I've had very little sickness, and it's a terrific product. I've only been able to buy it through jeds.com, and I contacted the company a couple times because I sell probably more avian solution than anybody in the world, but they didn't really get back to me. But it is a good product. It's inexpensive. I buy the quart size. I think it makes 900 gallons of water. The other products are good. Any oregano product I would use, but economically, the avian solution is very strong and it goes a long way. If you only ever had racing pigeons, did you start with tumblers or any other breed? My first pigeons were fantail pigeons. We had chickens, and I saw a pair of fantail pigeons, and my father bought them, and they overproduced in the loft. And I let some out. I said, oh, these pigeons are overtaking my chicken coop. And I let some out. And they went from house to house to house. And then they landed back in the backyard. I opened the door, and the fantails marched into the chicken coop. And my dad got home from work. And I said, Dad, you won't believe it. And I told him the story. And he goes, oh, I know a guy with homing pigeons. You might like those. And we went to visit. It was Fred Padula, a guy in Quincy, Massachusetts. We went to visit. And I saw the nests and the clock and the red checkers. And that was it. It was like chickens went, pigeons came, and whatever it's been, 50 years later, it was still pigeon crazy. Let's see. When am I coming to Orlando? I'll be in the area pretty soon next year. The Ron Freed probably has a good oregano product. I've never used it. I do have birds in the Hoosier race. No, I'm not going to the race this year. I'm disappointed. I have the convention race like a little over a week later. I'm handling birds for the IF convention, so I won't be able to go to the Hoosier race. And that's, if you haven't been in the Hoosier race, if you haven't entered, or you haven't attended the event, put it on your bucket list. It's quite an event. It's the best event in the U.S. And I hear the Florida Derby does a great event too. I haven't been to that, and I'm going to do that again. Once I move to Florida, I'll be there every year. I get some birds from a fella here in Missouri, Mike Westfall. He last year did fantastic. Mike has super pigeons. I know Mike, super pigeons. And you went to the right guy. You did a good job. Any advice in getting started in one loft racing? Not really, other than you only have the pigeons for 6 weeks. You cannot miss a feeding. You must vaccinate the birds. They must have all the grits and minerals in front of them. You can't mess up. You have a small little window to send these birds to have these perfect pigeons for the one loft races. And then when you ship them to the one loft race, don't stuff 6 birds in a 2-bird box. Spread them out. Don't stress them. When I ship my birds to the one loft races, there's plenty of room in those boxes. And I make sure of it, where I'll, hear all the time, the one loft race, somebody's trying to save $50 on entering a team in the Hoosier, and they're going to lose thousands because they stress their pigeons out. So don't make any mistakes, and it'll make a big difference. Let's see. Hard to find barley in our country. What's a good substitute? I don't know if you can find patty rice, but it's a good substitute. But you might be able to find that. But I know a lot of people are having trouble finding barley in the country. Let's see. I got my barley yesterday. Can I change with barley right away? Yeah, just change. Just go right to it. They're not going to eat it at first. People get crazy worrying about, I can't just go from one feed to the other. My birds go from a different feed, bang, bang, bang. It doesn't matter. It doesn't affect them at all. So I feed them according to what's going on. I'll go right to 100% barley, and come out from the race. They're eating all the rich feeds, and right back to the barley mix. And it doesn't matter. You don't have to worry about that. This is Mike Walsh. Great information. A lot of excellent tips. Keep doing what you're doing. Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad everybody likes it. And if you could share my videos to your friends, maybe we can get my numbers up. I gained like 5,000 subscribers in a year. I never imagined. I can't even believe it. I'm having fun with this here, and I hope everybody else is enjoying. Have you ever used unmilled small rice in your pigeon feed? No, I haven't really. I'm not too familiar with rice. I'm not sure what unmilled would be. Maybe it would be in the husk. It's probably not so bad. Might be a decent feed. Well, that's good. I'm glad you shared with Rob Patterson. And I'm planning on relocating to Florida next August if my son goes to Florida, a school in Florida. If not, it might be California. His first choice is the University of Miami, so I might be living around Miami. His next choice is Tampa, so I might be in the little south of Spring Hill. And yeah, I might have to be able to take care of some of these birds there when I'm down there. Somebody tried a product, New Biotics from AG Supply. It's a concentrated oregano water soluble product. Is excellent and very reasonable. Yeah, you know what? If possible, in the comments, put a link after the video, and we'll take a look. And you know, I'm open to that. Opinion on top flies in New England. I fly out of Fall River. Well, there's some super fancies in this area. I mean, it's not like it once was. I mean, we used to have 200 something lofts in Boston and a big army of lofts in southern New England. But there's some great fanciers in this area. There's some top guys. And the best fanciers that I race against could win anywhere in the world. They could go to Belgium, they'd win. They could go to England, they'd win. They could move to Spring Hill, they'd win. It wouldn't matter. The best fanciers in my area could win anywhere in the world. And that's where I think that a lot of times we feel that, you know, the grass is always greener. Those guys are so much better. And no, it's not the case. The top guys would win anywhere. And I know the top 10 guys in my area could dominate anywhere in the world and probably be the best flyer in most of the areas in the world. So a lot of the Europeans now, and especially some of the young Belgian fanciers, have been coming to America and copying methods from the Americans, even droppers. I mean, I used to go to Europe in the 80s, late 80s, early 90s. The bird would come home and it would land on the loft, and then it would jump to the other loft and then fly in the window and go to its nest box. And then the fancy would go in and take the counter mark off and clock it. And I'm like, wow, we were using the speed traps, or at least we could take the counter mark off outside and clock it. Then the Belgians started switching to the speed traps. And then now they're using droppers and they're on the pads. And those guys, those Europeans are like the guys from Florida. Those birds are out of the sky and boom, they're on the pad. And, you know, a lot of that came from America, which is good. Yeah, someone's asking, like, to hit the like button. That'd be great. If you had time, would you keep your celibate hens in the widowed hen boxes to keep them separate? Do you think this would improve the results? I'm not sure. I know fanciers that keep them in the separate boxes have had a lot of success. I don't know how boring it would be for the pigeons. You know, maybe just like if they're just in a box and they can't see anything, maybe it'd be a miserable life. I mean, I lock mine out in a little aviary out in front of the loft. They're locked out there all day. They're on wire. They're outside. At least they're with other pigeons. They're seeing birds fly by and, you know, whatever. But I'm not sure. I know fanciers have had success keeping them in boxes, but for me, it's a lot of extra work. And maybe it would just be too bored. Maybe it would be not a fun life for those birds. But again, I'm not sure. White and red dairy mix and on mixes. Now I think the dairy is kind of crap. I think it's cheap, and that's why it's in the mixes. That's why the grain companies put it in the mixes. It's probably one of the least favorite of the mix. What is the best advice you can give young fanciers in selecting a bird? Well, I would say every superstar pigeon, the true superstars, have amazing feather quality, soft, silky, supple feather. As soon as you touch a pigeon with super feather quality, pick great feather, and then pick a pigeon that doesn't feel heavy. If it feels like it's got weight to it, don't select that one. Pick one that has great, soft, silky feather, and it feels very, very buoyant. It's like, you know, an empty Coke can as opposed to a full Coke can. You now have the weight of a can of Coke, and then sometimes you'll grab a pigeon and like, wow, this pigeon it's got some, you know, meat on it, but boy, it doesn't feel like it weighs anything. And if you select great feathered pigeons that are corky, game gets a lot easier, a lot faster. Let's see. What do you mean by, it's blocked out here on me, a 2-day long distance bird? Yeah, I mean, some of the birds races are overnight races, like in Belgium and stuff. They let the Barcelona go, say like 9:30 in the morning, and the birds fly all day, and they'll come in usually the next morning, and they do that because there's fancies that fly like over 700 miles, so it's not fair. If they let them go at sun up, then the 600-mile guys will be getting day birds, and the 780-mile guys, birds have to fly the second day. So they try to make it so everybody's birds have to fly on the second day. Again, still some make it on the day. But I'm not a real big fan of those pigeons. I think they have their value to breed them in your family. I think a lot of the best pigeons have maybe like 25% long distance pigeons or extreme long distance pigeons in, but that's plenty. No more than 25% extreme long distance pigeon in your birds. That's enough because usually they're a little slow. The breeders, do you feed a lot of peas when the breeders are feeding youngsters? Not necessarily. I feed the Versailles Lager Champion. I'll mix the energy mix, whatever in there. The babies tend to be beautiful. I've fed a lot of different breeder mixes. The babies always come out really nice. The most important thing would be the minerals. The minerals are much more important than the grain. I have the pink minerals, the brown mineral blocks, the Versailles Lager Grit and Pickstone. I have the Versailles Lager Grit and Redstone. My favorite things would be the Vitamineral, natural Vitamineral, the pink mineral made by Natural. And that's my favorite supplement. And then, the pick pots and the pick stones and all that would come after that. And the Versailles Lager Grit. The problem with what a lot of fanciers do, don't feed crushed granite grit. It's like, supply houses will crush granite. There are all these little sharp edges. I think it irritates the gut. I think it leads to health problems. If a pigeon in nature or a pheasant or a quail, they would eat a little stone. Their gizzard is full of round stones. So by giving these sharp edges and these sharp grit edges, it's not good. So if you can't get the grit I feed, like a Versailles Lager grit with redstone, it's all little pebbles and little shells like come off the bottom of the ocean. You may want to go to like a good running riverbank and find little pebbles. Bring them home, rinse them, bake them in the oven at 400 degrees for 10 minutes, let them cool. Use that for your grit. Add calcium. Or you can go to the ocean and you'll find the most beautiful grit. If you get open ocean, sometimes along the rocks, small little pebbles, round, worn by the ocean. That's a grit. This granite crap is awful, this crushed granite stuff. And I did a video, one of my earlier videos that got very few views. I think you'd enjoy it. I talk about grit and I show the examples of the different types of grits. And it's one of my very, very earliest videos. So I would recommend taking a look and see what you think. Wheat is good for pigeon. Let's see. In India, barley is not easily available. Yeah, it makes it tough because I love barley so much. But again, if you can't get barley, then you have to be really strict with your feeding. You have to feed once a day, and you have to just feed enough so your birds don't get rounded heavy. You have to be crazy strict with the feeding if you can't get barley. And again, if you're feeding more than once a day, you're going to overfeed the birds because they'll train you. They act like they're starving. I'm over at the lofts in the mornings. I feed the birds, that's it till the next day. If I was back in the evening, they would act like they never ate in the morning. So feed them once a day, and you'd have to be really strict with the feeding. And that would be, you can still do it with grain, but you have to be really strict. Still finding it hard to believe that celibate hens are better than hens raised on jealousy system, motivated in some way. Could you speak on this? Thanks for everything. Yeah, that motivation stuff is the biggest waste of time in the pigeon sport. We try to take credit for all this teasing and motivating. If you motivate your pigeons, you're going to help one, you're going to hurt 20. So my hens race to the V perch. My youngsters, they're in the young bird loft, they race to the perches. No motivation. I shouldn't name some names, but some of the top Belgian fanciers, probably one of the best fanciers in Belgium, he stopped all motivating the birds, and he's winning national aces. He's one of the best flyers in Belgium. Cause yourself more work, especially with hens and young birds. Now, the widowhood cocks, I think, a more traditional system. And I don't think it's the motivation. I think you have to let them out. They come in a form. You have to let them loft fly. Let them every morning, let them out. Let them just bounce around and fly and come in a form. My birds don't do that. I think that's what hurts me. I don't think they need a hen or anything coming home. But I don't think they get the kind of form that I get with my hens, because the hens can just sit and still race to the top. Thanks, Sykes. I'm a YouTube star. You're too nice. I'm learning from you. You're the real star in this thing. One of the best information on YouTube. Well, I appreciate it. I do appreciate it. I enjoy it. I appreciate all the nice words. And if I can help, great. I mean, my systems are simple and common sense, and they don't take a lot of time. Now, if you have all day, if I just mess with a race team all day, maybe I do things different. But I run in and run out, and I want to compete. And very few people have the time to mess with the birds, all day long. Any secrets on getting your birds to break? Yes, you have to teach them to break. They don't just break. Now, going back, if you have perfect body weight and you have really good healthy pigeons, there's no need to break, because they're flying away from everybody else's birds. The fatties are just falling back. So I have an advantage where if my birds are in perfect body weight and they're just coming home, there's no need to break, because they're in the front after 4 or 5 hours. But if you need them to break, you have to train them to break. You have to get together with another fancier. You don't have to go on the race course. If you have to go north and train north so the birds will break. If you have to meet in the middle, he drives 20 miles your direction, you might drive 20 miles his direction. Let the birds go. Let them circle. And then after 4 or 5 times, they're going to come into that flock and say, well, this group isn't going home my direction. And they're just going to go. They're going to split. You have to teach. I did a video on educating young birds, and I talk a lot about this here. You have to teach them to break. I put my birds on a training truck. It's about 40 miles south of me, and I'm the only person in the area on that truck. And the first few tosses, they all get sucked into the south. First 3 or 4 times, they come like 45 minutes after those guys are getting their birds. After 4, 5, 6 times, their birds are flying 70 miles in 85 minutes, and my birds are flying 70 miles in 85 minutes. So they're breaking. Where they're breaking, I'm not sure, but they learned that those pigeons aren't coming my way after a while. So you do have to teach them to break. And once you teach them to break, it's a really good thing. And then if you nail the body weight, it's even a better thing. That combination is hard to beat. Name 5 seed mix which you can give racing pigeons since ready mix is not available in our country. Well, that's a tough one. I mean, if you can get yourself barley and safflower, that's the top 2 if you're going to race on that. I'm really not sure after that. They're the 2 most important stuff. If you can't, for racing, just try to get barley and safflower. And if you can't get that, maybe barley and sunflower, or barley and some type of fat seed. And that's all you would really need. Van Robe's Super Grit Minerals is one of the best products in the market. Yeah, a lot of those mixed mineral buckets, I use Vercel Lager all-in-one. The Javati is sold by Vita King, great product. I mean, I have my stuff delivered, so Global Pigeon Supplies brings everything to my house. So I buy what they have. But those mixed mineral buckets are good. But all they did was take all the minerals that I give individually, crushed it all up and put it together. They use the pink mineral, the Vita mineral, and the brown mineral blocks. And the problem is they put the treat seeds in it. They put those tiny little treat seeds, and the birds destroy it. And I only use the mixed minerals on the day they return from the race and not after Tuesday, because they tend to eat too much of it. But it's great product for the breeders. But you can buy it individually, separately also. Let's see. It's way too much work for guys that have to work and motivate in the motivation thing. Yeah, you know what? If you don't have to worry about motivating them and separating birds and all that, to make your life a lot easier, because I don't have time for all that, and it doesn't matter. All that motivation stuff, it really doesn't matter. What do you mean by you sell more solutions in the world? Oh, no, I was talking about the Van Beek Global, the avian solution, the oregano product. I've been talking about it for years, so I'm sure that they sell a lot of that stuff because of me. It's a great product, and I should get my little kickback from them. What's my main business? My main business, I've done a lot of things, but right now it's the auction business. Bestpigeons.com. I'm in the auction business, and I'm trying to get to the point where I'm totally electronic and not doing all the labor. So that's my main business. I've been in the importing business. I've imported thousands of pigeons. I've been in the exporting business. I've exported thousands of pigeons, and I sell pigeons, but I'm actually, what you'd call a professional pigeon fancier, but the last thing I have time for are my own birds, my own racing pigeons, my own birds. So everything else is the business end of the sport. And what I love most is the racing and the bird, my own birds, but I don't have time for them. So it's just kind of sad. Is brewer's yeast every day be harmful? No, it wouldn't be harmful. Brewer's yeast is a good product, but no need to use it every day. I find people overdo it. Once or twice a week is plenty. And you can mix like a flaxseed oil on the feed with brewer's yeast. Flax oil is loaded with omega-3s, which is an anti-inflammatory. I like it for the old bird season. Although this old bird season, I had an incredible old bird season. And I did not use any supplements. Like all the stuff I preach that I've used for years, nothing. I gave them the apple cider vinegar after the race for 2 days. No mixing anything on the feed, no additional things, grits and minerals, and feed. And they flew just as well. But I think part of the reason was, they have such a strong immune system through years of no antibiotics that maybe I can get away with it. Where someone started out would be better off using some of the more of the natural products. Like I did a video on my natural products. What is the difference between barley and depurative? Well, barley, the base of depurative mix is usually barley. It's mostly barley. So you can mix your own. You can take barley and maybe mix 30%, say a breeder conditioner, a champion, Vercel Lager champion, or some type of grain mix. Or you can buy it as a depurative. There's a lot of good companies that make a nice depurative mix. And the depurative I use Vercel Lager Deep Pure. It's a depurative mix. And again, when you race in short distance races, if you're feeding light to heavy, your birds are going to the races heavy. So with short distance, that's all they get 6 days a week is the depurative mix. They eat the grain on the day of return, then back to the barley mix or depurative mix. Let's see. Hi, Frank. Are you originally from the East Coast of USA? Yes. I grew up 30 miles, 20 miles south of Boston, Quincy, Massachusetts. I do have the Boston accent. I lived in Oregon for about 5 years, and my accent was a lot better then, but it's still, it comes out, especially when I get tired. I've been pretty tired. What do you suggest on giving a single almond just before long distance racing? Never tried it. Almond would be a good fat seed. But I don't know. I've never popped an almond down the bird's throat or anything like that. If they can't eat it, I wouldn't do it. I'm sure it wouldn't hurt. I'm sure it's just another good fat seed. Oh, someone asked about motivation. They're racing for the first time. I like when people are racing for the first time. It's pretty exciting. My wife is saying hello. What is the best lice control? I think the best bet is to put, I use borax in the bath water, 20 mule team borax, and I put maybe a half a cup per gallon, mix it up. That tends to kill everything. The ivermectin sheep drench, you have to buy the sheep drench. It comes in a big bottle, add a teaspoon to the gallon, that kills everything. I don't like using the poisons and the powders. And when I was a kid, I used to say to my dad, he worked for the city of Quincy, and he had every possible pesticide available. And I said, Dad, my birds have lice. And he's like, oh, here, this will work. He'd give me chlordane. He'd give me DDT. He'd give me methalothione. And I said, I made the decision about 35 years ago that I'm not going to keep exposing myself to all these pesticides. So you're better off putting something like borax or ivermectin in the bath water and not exposing yourself to all this crap. Is it good to give anti-thirst pill to racing birds before races? I saw some fancies doing this. You know, and I'm not sure. I'm not familiar with an anti-thirst pill. I mean, if you're giving them a pill 2 days before an event, I can't imagine it's going to have any effect. And maybe just a lot of work. Most of these places and companies, they want to sell a lot of product, and you'll find that these products will come out. There'll be a big push. Everybody will use them, and then you'll never hear of them again. Some of them have staying power, but most of this stuff is just short-lived. How can I connect personally? I'm from India. You know, you guys can email me. I have a website. I'll throw it in the description, McLaughlinLofts.com. And I do get a ton of emails. So if you have a question, maybe put in the comments. And then maybe if someone has a question, I can answer it for 10 instead of all individually. But I try to help. Is it true that a racing pigeon, or any pigeon for that matter, will utilize and metabolize feed they are given for any race, or is it absolutely necessary to feed all the expensive brands? No, you don't. You don't have to feed all the expensive brands. I mean, again, feed companies, they put out this schedule. They want you to feed this on Monday, this on Tuesday morning, something on Tuesday night, this on Wednesday, this Thursday, Friday morning, this on Saturday. Again, they're in the feed business. It's not necessary. Story that I like to tell, I used to hang with Tony Bellucci in Belgium all the time. And he said after World War II, the fanciers that were doing all the winning were the poor fanciers, and they couldn't afford any of the good grains. They were just feeding the cheapest scratch stuff, and they were doing all the winning. So you don't have to go crazy with the feed as long as it's clean and, you know, it's not bad or moldy. I mean, don't worry too much. The minerals are much more important. Yeah, I see you mix minerals daily, give them together, which is fine. You know, they waste a lot of if they waste a lot of minerals. I do it individually, usually in separate cups. So I should say my brother does. I got a bird from you last year, my first year flying. Youngster has been super nice with great. I hope you have some luck. And a lot of people are racing from the first time. I got a lot of newbies that follow me, but I also have some older fanciers that have been successful, that have taken it to a new level or have done just as good without as much work. So if you can win as much as you've always won with like half the effort, I think it's beneficial. So I can help new or old alike. What are the points in the races where I start adding more carbs and fat? Over 5-6 hours. If the races are like 6 hours and below, I just feed the depurative. And if you're going to have a headwind, maybe you can add, you know, fat seeds the day of shipping. But again, the body weight is more important than giving them all that extra. I like them nice and corky, light and buoyant. And once you nail that, you realize how to do it, you see the results, you'll be great. Racing for the first time in Frank's methods. I'm having great results. Well, congratulations, Redemption Loft. I'm happy. That's good to hear. On breeding, what would you advocate? Outcross based on packing superstars in the pedigree. How do you determine where to take the next generation after the cross? Well, the best pigeons, and if I could give advice to breeding, how to breed great pigeons, pack as many unrelated superstars as you can in the pedigree. So if all the grandparents are great pigeons, your odds of breeding great pigeons are enhanced. Now, I tend to, when you breed like that, if you have a really good racer, a good performance pigeon, then bring that back into the family. So I try to, you know, breed some of the performance birds back in, or if you have a top breeding pair, stock some of those children and then breed those. But again, it's trial and error. And I've been able to select some good pigeons over the years, and I had a good knack for seeing, you know, quality and making the right choices. And it's helped me maintain these birds for decades, really. If you may hear my African gray parrot in the background, he's just started carrying on a little bit. Let's see where we're at. Can you tell about youngsters who doesn't molt completely at the end of the molting period? Youngsters hatch in spring. Are they good for racing next year? Yeah, I don't worry about it. I mean, I usually I'll race them the following season. You may, if you're real serious, if they don't finish the molt, they have a couple of flights to molt. You can take the tip off the flight, let the flight dry, you know, pull the 8th flight, let it grow in, And when you pull the 8th, take the tip off the 9th, you could pull the last few flights. So they go into an old bird with a full mature wing. And you can do that through the winter when they're laid up. And a lot of fanciers do that they will pull the flights that don't molt naturally by the end of the young bird season. Total widowhood is the best system to fly inland racing up to 200 miles. That's from Welsh Feather. Yeah, I mean, I raced total widowhood for 30 years before I started with the hens, and I thought there was nothing better than total widowhood. And then I started racing those celibate hens, and I would never go back. If I could only race one thing, I would race those celibate hens. And I used to think years ago that the Remy Demes and Fleur Ravout and these guys, these hen racers, they were masters. These guys, wow, they're incredible. They win with these hens. They were at such an advantage. Now all the top Belgians fly hens. They all race hens because they realize the hen's probably going to do better than the cocks on most occasions. Let's see. I have a young bird hen pairing and laying eggs. Should I worry about the hen during training a race, or should I put her up? No, there's not much you can do. If she lays eggs, let her sit the eggs. I have some dummy eggs. I'll switch a set of dummy eggs under the young bird so they don't lay off, and let her sit. You can even, if you wanted to let her raise a baby to buy you more time. Again, I don't think it adds any motivation, but you don't want them laying every 10 days. So I just leave the eggs. I let them sit them until they leave them. And once they're working and exercising and racing, they don't lay as much as they would have if they were just sitting around. How would you rate the pigeons of the USA versus the likes of Belgium, Germany, Holland, etc.? Well, when I first started going to Belgium and Holland in the late 80s, there was no comparison. I saw those pigeons over there, and I saw the quality, and I saw the health, and I was stunned. I mean, I had an epiphany. I was like, I handled pigeons like nothing I had ever seen. Now, 40 years later, no. The pigeons in America are every bit as good. Some of the top Europeans are coming to America to buy pigeons. They're buying one loft pigeons from successful guys over here. There's no difference. The quality in America is just as good as everywhere else in the world right now. What you will find that a lot of areas don't have the type of competition, so they can't test the pigeons as well as some of the Europeans can. But yeah, the quality is there. Everybody has good pigeons. When I was a kid, say up and through the 80s anyways, if you had good pigeons, you could do a lot of winning. But now you have to have more than good pigeons. You have to have good pigeons. You have to have them healthy. You have to have super body weight. They have to be trained adequately because everybody has good pigeons. And that wasn't the case years ago. It wasn't the case at all. Have I ever used turmeric supplements? No, years ago I used some turmeric, but never any consistency. I'm not too familiar. I've tried a lot of things over the years, and if there's something that I could think of it, I would probably think of it and try it. And I used a lot of supplements, bodybuilding supplements back in the 90s. I was really into it in the mid 90s, into like the natural bodybuilding. So I was giving my birds creatine, and I was giving them like HMB, and I started with a lot of the flax oil back then too. But I didn't notice anything. I haven't messed with it ever since. I know beet juice. A lot of people are beet juice crazy, and it might offer a little bit of a performance enhancing. I haven't been consistent with it and haven't used it. Will a racing pigeon excrete excess amount of given vitamins and minerals in their supplements, which are water soluble like humans do? Yeah, the same with water soluble or fat soluble vitamins and minerals. You don't want to overdo the fat soluble. They'll excrete, the C's and the B's and all that stuff. So I tend to go light and I don't overdo it. You find with fanciers, they tend to think more is better, but more isn't necessarily better. So you're better off, using them very light. And don't if it says a quarter teaspoon, use a quarter teaspoon or a little less. Don't say, well, if a quarter teaspoon is good, maybe a teaspoon is better. It's not good. And I wouldn't go overboard with that. And if I could ask everybody to hit the like button to share, to help with the algorithm. And again, This is Frank McLaughlin, McLaughlin Lofts. If you could share and put your comment below what video you like and share it with a friend, put it in the comments. And if you're a subscriber, in a couple weeks, I am going to give away a pair of pigeons and a few others to the runner-ups. I'll do the drawing and I'll let everybody know. I'll do a comment, just a random comment selector for my subscribers. And again, I appreciate it. And we'll do this again maybe in a month or so. Thank you so much.